Hi, this is Gail Sokol. On today's show, we're going to talk about stovetop custards made without a starch.
Welcome to Baking Radio. Learn the art and science of baking with author, educator, and award-winning chef, Gail Sokol. Whether you've been baking your whole life or you're brand new to the world of baking and you're looking to build your confidence and learn new skills in the kitchen, you're in the right place. This is Baking Radio.
So today we're going to talk about stovetop custards made without a starch. That's a mouthful. In general, what is a custard? We know we love them, but what are they? Well, it's usually some liquid thickened by the coagulation of eggs. We use eggs as the thickening agent, and that's the bottom line. That covers a bunch of different types of custards. So a stovetop custard is a custard that's made on top of the stove, right? I bet you're surprised by that. It's actually not made in the oven. It's made from top to bottom, from beginning to end, on top of the stove. So I'm going to give you eventually a wonderful recipe for a stovetop custard called Creme Anglaise. And you might have heard of this. It's a custard sauce. It can be any flavor. I'm going to give you a basic vanilla creme anglaise recipe that can be used as the basis for ice cream. It could be used as a sauce over fruit or to paint a plate, which is what I love to do. So you put a little bit on a plate next to a chocolate cake or another dessert. Absolutely delicious. So let's talk about this thickening and coagulation. That's a sort of a big word, and people get scared of that, like they're going to be doing some sort of a science experiment. And basically, cooking and baking have a lot of science in them, especially baking. We're going to talk about how wonderful eggs are, and we've talked about the wonderfulness of eggs on previous shows. And I think I'm always going to sort of boost up the egg because it's a wonderful ingredient, especially for bakers. So the heat of whatever we're using, whether it's the stovetop or in the oven, denatures the egg proteins. And they actually can help what's known as, what I just said, denature, or sort of unwind that strand of protein. So proteins look like pieces of curly hair. And I always think of a little pig's tail, sort of a corkscrew shape. And as it's heated, not the pig's tail, but the strand of protein, as it's heated, this word denature happens. It denatures that strand of protein. So it unwinds it, and it creates sort of a straighter tail, a straighter protein strand. And as it's heated, it straightens out more and more, and it captures protein from the other custard ingredients, these other liquids and other things in a custard, and holds them in between. When it does that, this creates this viscosity, this thick liquid that turns into this creamy custard. And that's what we love about them. So let's start setting up the idea that we're going to make a stovetop custard without a starch. So why do I even have to say without a starch? What's the big deal? Well, there is a big deal. If you make a stovetop custard with a starch, you can do different things with it than you can if it's made without a starch. And I even stated that in my book, Baking with Success, my newest cookbook, because it really does allow you to do certain things. So if you have a starch, you can actually bring a custard to the boil. Oh yeah, and it won't make the eggs curdle. Isn't that weird? Isn't that fabulous? But a stovetop custard made without a starch, oh, you got to be a little more careful, and you cannot bring it to the boil. So let me give you a typical recipe, a typical ingredient list for a stovetop custard. Usually there's dairy in it. It's usually whole milk or heavy cream if you really want to make it rich, or even half and half. And sometimes it's a combination of milk and cream. They're usually warmed in a saucepan. And then egg yolks. There's no egg whites in this. There's only egg yolks because it's super rich. And remember, the yolk of an egg, that's what's got the fat. That's what we love about it, that richness and creaminess that it can produce. So egg yolks are actually whisked with sugar until they're sort of light, and you'll see the yolk of the egg get lighter in color. Now, I'm going to give you an actual recipe in a few minutes, but I just want to go over the procedure very quickly. As you heat up your dairy, your warmed milk, you're going to slowly pour it into your egg yolks and sugar. And you have to do it slowly because eggs, if you put them in with hot liquid super suddenly, what happens? They curdle. And you're going to have the most delicious vanilla scrambled eggs anyone ever had. But I don't want scrambled eggs. I want this beautiful creme anglaise, this beautiful custard sauce. So you have to do what's known as tempering the eggs. Like you have a bad temper and you get mad. Well, eggs get a little funny if they're put in with a hot liquid. So you have to do it gradually. So you take your hot liquid and you whisk with one hand your egg yolk and sugar mixture, and you slowly add your dairy, your hot liquids, into your egg mixture, and you slowly whisk it in. And you'll see nothing will curdle, but if you add it too quickly, it could. So you whisk it very slowly. Take your time. Let those eggs get used to that warmth of the dairy, of that milk or cream. And then once it's all in there and you have it in your bowl, and you have to make sure your bowl is heat proof. So you want to make sure that your bowl can withstand the heat. You're going to take that bowl with the egg yolks, the sugar, and the hot dairy, and you're going to pour it back into the saucepan that held that dairy product, that milk or cream. And then you're going to put it on the stove. And this is where things get interesting. You're going to take either a wooden spoon. Sometimes I start out with a whisk, but a wooden spoon can actually get into the corners, into the edges of the round saucepan. So there's really no corners, but the edges of the saucepan, so you can actually get anything that coagulates, that firms up, because that egg protein will want to firm up, because that's what eggs do. They cook, right? When you make your omelet in the morning, eggs firm up and they coagulate. We just don't want them to become so curdled that we can't, we don't want them to become like sort of cottage cheese in texture. So once you get it on the heat, you're going to modify your heat and you're going to keep stirring, never allowing it to come to a boil. Never. Okay? Never, never. And eventually you'll see this beautiful thickness happen. Now, to ensure that it doesn't boil and I have really the right temperature, I will use a thermometer. So I'll get a bimetallic stem thermometer. You can buy one in any grocery store or department store or a kitchen supply store. They're usually very inexpensive. And you want to put it into the egg mixture. And you want to make sure that it does not go beyond 180 or 185 degrees Fahrenheit, because that's when curdling of eggs can occur, especially the yolk. So at this point, when it gets very close to about 170, I take my whisk out and put my wooden spoon in. And I'm using a wooden spoon on purpose. You can use a stainless steel spoon, but as you heat it, you'll notice it'll get thicker. Keep going into the edges, and eventually you'll see that the mixture will coat the back of that spoon, whether it's wooden or stainless steel. And you'll be able to pull your finger across the bottom of that spoon, and it will leave a path. It won't fill in with the custard because it won't be liquidy anymore. It'll be nice and thick and viscous. So this is the viscosity that you want for your creme anglaise. And at that point, you take it off the heat and you've got yourself a fabulous creme anglaise. So what I want to do now is I want to give you a specific recipe and some tips of how to prevent your curdling, any curdling of this egg yolk. And sometimes it happens, so we can fix it. So don't despair, don't worry. So stovetop custard with no starch, otherwise known as our Creme Anglaise, which is a French custard sauce, it will make about 1 cup of sauce, which is plenty to serve over fruit or a special dessert or a sponge cake, or even to use on the bottom of a plate with a special dessert. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to combine 1/2 cup of whole milk and 1/2 cup of heavy cream. And you're going to bring them to a simmer in a saucepan. And the saucepan should be medium sized. Don't make it super tiny. So remember what simmer means. Simmer means just under a boil. You don't want to see large bubbles, just bubbles around the edges of that saucepan. And then you're going to take egg yolks, 3 large egg yolks, and you're going to whisk them together in a heat-proof bowl. So make sure it's either stainless steel or maybe Pyrex, something that's not going to crack when the hot dairy is going to get added to it. And you're going to add 3.5 tablespoons of granulated sugar into your egg yolks, and you're going to whisk them together. And you're going to keep whisking until that sugar dissolves a little bit. It'll break down a little bit. And your yolks are slightly lighter in color. You're going to take your hot milk and cream mixture, and you're going to slowly, remember tempering your eggs? If you ever hear that term, you're going to slowly add your milk mixture in to your egg yolk and sugar mixture very slowly, and you're going to whisk them together, the yolks and the sugar. Whisk until you have all that hot liquid added to it. And then you're going to return that custard to the same saucepan. Just pour it right back in, and you're going to bring that saucepan to low heat on the burner, and you're going to continue cooking that custard until it thickens and leaves a path on the back of a spoon when your finger's drawn across it. Now, this could take 5 minutes. It could take 7 minutes, no longer than that. And remember, a thermometer should reach about 180 degrees, no more than 185 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, this is what I like to do to ensure. I love baking insurance. I love to do insurance so that nothing gets messed up. And if I do mess up, I can fix it immediately. What I have not told you is before I started this entire recipe, I have taken a bowl, I filled it with ice halfway and some water, cold water. So I've made an ice water bath. Then I've taken a smaller bowl and put it on top of that. And now I'm going to take a sieve and put it into that second bowl on top. It sounds like a real contraption that I made, but it's super easy to make. And then you're going to pour the mixture that you just made, that creme anglaise. It's nice and hot, and you're going to pour it through the strainer, and the strainer will immediately put it into that clean bowl set over the ice water bath. This will stop the cooking process pronto. It will completely stop any carryover cooking, and there won't be any further coagulation of your eggs. Now, you may notice that you catch a few little tiny scrambled eggs on the bottom of that sieve, and that's okay because we caught them. We caught them in the sieve, and they're not in our beautiful creme anglaise sauce. So our sauce is going to be perfectly smooth and perfectly creamy. Now, once we remove our strainer and we get maybe some little bits of coagulated egg, we remove those and take that away. We're going to add a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, and use pure vanilla extract because the artificial vanilla tastes like cough syrup to me and many others. So use pure. It actually will make your creme anglaise a much higher quality product. So you're going to stir in the vanilla extract. And then once this mixture becomes room temperature or cool enough that you can cover it, you will cover it and you can chill it. And it can be made one day ahead, and it's spectacular. You could freeze this in an ice cream maker and have a small amount of French vanilla ice cream. You could put this, like I said, as a sauce over a souffle. You could dip donuts into it. You could do so many different things with this creme anglaise. Again, because it's made without a starch, you must be very careful. So you want to watch the temperature, and you must use a thermometer or really, really watch that spoon so you don't see any egg getting actually curdled and made into like curds. That would not be good. So we've learned how to actually make this beautiful French custard sauce. It really isn't hard. It's super easy to do. And if you have any questions about any type of creme anglaise or any other type of stovetop custard made without a starch, go on over to bakingradio.com and leave me a message. I would love to answer some of your questions on air. On next week's show, we're going to be discussing stovetop custards made with a starch added.